And thank you for joining us here on PM Express. And tonight we are having a conversation about what Labour is doing in the midst of the debt exchange program. You know, they have a tussle now with government. They say they will not allow their pension funds to participate in the debt exchange program. Government has said that they should. They've extended the deadline for signing on to the debt exchange program now. But it looks like we are facing a major crisis of some significant proportions when it comes to the Labour front because of what the organized Labour has threatened to do. And tonight we're going to delve into that. What really is their issue? And did they really have a case as far as the debt exchange program is concerned? Let's look at the Labour versus government dynamic as far as this is concerned. And we start tonight with the major announcement made by Labour this week that they've called an indefinite strike for the 27th of December. And this is all workers, all workers. In fact, they've clarified that it is not only workers in the public sector, but they're expecting workers in the private sector as well to join this strike, because fundamentally they believe the issues around the pensions affect all workers. And so they want all of us to join this strike to demand one thing, which is an exemption from the debt exchange program for pension funds. And they say until that is done, they are not calling off the strike once it starts on the 27th. And today, I think it's the day when the reality of that strike began to dawn, because you will hear teachers, you will hear other public sector workers complaining and threatening strike and actually call a strike. It won't send shivers down your spine as much as when the doctors and the nurses do so. And the first group to actually issue a clear roadmap and directive to its members as far as the debt exchange program is concerned, it turns out to be the doctors, the nurses, and all health professionals in this country, including pharmacists. And so today, jointly issued a communique directed at all health workers across this country, asking them to, one, withdraw all outpatient services beginning from the 27th of December. This will lead to loss of lives. But that's not all. Then on the 2nd of January, they'll withdraw emergency services. Just stop for a second and think about it, which means that if an ambulance rushes to your house because you've been called, say you've collapsed, you need urgent medical care, or you're dying, they will not tend to you. The doctors won't tend to you, the nurses will tend to you, the pharmacists will also close shop. That is how significant this particular issue is with what they've announced today. Then the last, they're talking about withdrawal of then all services. All services will then go off as well on the 9th of January. This was issued today by all of the health workers, the doctors, the nurses, the pharmacists, and the government and allied health professionals as well. So it is the first indication that they are not bluffing. They are not bluffing because this has been issued to their members as far as this is concerned. So what really is the issue? We've isolated an aspect of the bond conversation which affects the pension funds, the ESLA bonds and the Dachi bonds. Now, the fight is over. Government decision to announce the debt exchange program, which means that pension funds that are significantly exposed, we understand, to government bonds will take a hit. Next year, they'll receive 0%, zero interest on their coupon, zero. The year after that, they'll receive 5%. In 2025, they'll receive 10%. All the way to maturity. That is significantly less than what they signed up to, what the agreement was when they were buying those bonds. And the fear is, according to the workers, is that will erode their pensions and leave them pretty naked when it comes to the time of retirement. And so they are fighting it. So the question to ask is, what is the exposure? What's the level of exposure? We're talking about some 2.32 billion when it comes to the ESLA and Dachi bonds. And this is according to the Ministry of Finance 2021 debt report. We'll get further clarity on the very latest on this, because this is 2021 debt report by the Finance Ministry giving us this figure. We'll break this down further. If you look at it, look at the ESLA bonds, you take the ESLA bonds as an isolated item. The domestic sector that ESLA bond holds, in terms of all the bonds that were issued, 8.69 billion. Out of that, the pensions funds are exposed to the tune of 1.83 billion, right? That's 21% of the entire debt portfolio, of the portfolio of the domestic bonds that the ESLA bonds have been issued. The pension fund is holding 21%. So that is quite significant there, right? That is what they are talking about. And then you go to the Dacha bonds, 19.8%. In real terms, they're talking about 485 million CDs exposure there. And this, by the way, includes SNIT. So when they say private sector, they mean that we are all exposed here, right? So in effect, what this means is the bonds that the pension funds, including SNITs, have bought with government, that they were expecting returns so they can then, make good on their promises to you when you retire, will be affected. So next year they'll get zero interest. The question is, okay, so when you retire next year and possibly they were expecting returns so that they can, pay you your pensions, what happens? Is a key question that they've been asking. And they say they don't think that it will be good for those who are already exposed in this particular issue. Now you look at the government expenditure on flagship programs. And I bring this up because the doctors were very clear when I spoke to them on radio, the president. The president said, the reason why we are not compromising is because they haven't seen government carrying a significant part of the burden. So they will not allow government to shift almost the entire burden onto workers and touch their pension. So I asked him, okay, so what would soften your stance at least to sit with government and have a conversation? They said, well, if government can, review its own flagship programs, we will consider. It will give us an indication that government is willing to talk now because the curtain is beginning from within. And so we isolated this. If that is the case, how much really would this save this country? If you review, if you touch, all of it, currently we are at 9.24 billion. That is how much you would save this country. And they say, well, if you save 9.2 billion on all the flagship programs, free SHS and others, then you can probably channel this amount of money to fixing this problem that you have here, this 2.32 billion. So you protect the workers' pensions. You possibly have something more to save because you're talking about 9.24 billion. You have an excess of 6 billion to save to invest in some of the flagship programs, but not as much as you do currently. So that's one of the arguments. And then they said, government must also reduce its size. It's too big. You cannot have an elephant size and expect me to tighten my belt when you're loosening yours. So we said, okay, how realistic is this? We went to the Constitution and say, well, the Constitution says the cabinet, upper limit of ministers in cabinet is 19. If that is the case, then the framers of the Constitution possibly anticipated that the government this country can run with 19 ministers and be fine. Because if you're not in cabinet, really, you're not that important as a minister, right? I mean, there are levels of it. Cabinet is the ultimate. There's a reason why there's that segregation. Cabinet are the critical, most important ministries. If you're not there, then we can live without you, especially in a time of crisis. So we say, okay, let's use that assumption. All the ministries that government has is 28. Allocation is 72.8 billion. If you take only 19 strictly going to the cabinet limit, then you are spending 66 billion. You're saving 5.81 billion, right? In a time of crisis, you take these radical measures. If you save 5.81 billion, that is enough money to spare the pension exposure, right? So that is what the workers are saying. They're looking at what else is government doing? Is government carrying the burden? Is government sharing this burden equitably? And they say because of the flagship programs and the government, the mere size of government and expenditure at the National Cathedral, they don't see government negotiating this exchange program in good faith. Come to the table in good faith, show us these cuts, and we'll have a conversation. Tonight we'll have a conversation about this. I really want to understand from the workers. So what would give? Because the economy needs a deal around the debt exchange program. If the economy crashes, their pension funds will crash as well. So it is in your interest to have a deal, because at least the debt exchange program will ensure that you still have something when you're going on retirement. But without a debt exchange program, they possibly will have nothing at all, because government can pay and government will default. So they are between a rock and a hard place. Some middle ground must be found. Where can that possibly be? Where is the middle ground? We'll join the workers, and then the trustees themselves will also join us to have an honest conversation. Stay with me. Right now for a conversation is Dr. Frank Srebro, is the president of the Ghana Medical Association. Also joining me is Thomas Kwesi Esso. He's executive director of the Chamber of Corporate Trustees Ghana, and they represent the pension funds. And then Angel Kabonu is the president of the National Association of Graduate Teachers. We'll also be joined by Samuel Nkumbam. He's the University of Ghana president of the University Teachers Association of Ghana. All of them joining organized labor in this fight. Mr. So let me start with you. First of all, clarify for me. The data that we presented is from the 2021 Finance Ministry's debt report, which says your exposure to Dachi and Esla is just over 2 billion. Is that what it is? Is that your total exposure to government bonds?
Thank you very much. Good evening, Evans, and good evening to your viewers. I think you just took Dachi and Esla bonds out of the whole total equation. The haircut is actually happening, or the debt restructuring is actually happening on government insurances, GOG insurances. I mean, several of them, including Dachi and Esla.
Yes.
And if you look at the total domestic bonds, total domestic government debt, that is around 181 billion. And then this debt exchange program is happening on about 137 billion of these debts, which the pension funds are also exposed to. The pension funds in total in this are exposed to government in the region of 27 billion.
27 billion?
27 billion Ghana cedis.
The percentage is what?
And the percentage is about 20%. I mean, so it's 80% from us, and it's about 20% in government, in the 137 billion that government is trying to do.
So 80% of all your assets?
Of all our assets.
Is in government bonds?
Is in government bonds.
And as far as the government's own composition of the debt structure, components are concerned, it is 20% of that?
Yes, it's 20% of that. So you can understand why the pension trustees, including organized labor, will take this strong stand, because if you have 80% of all your assets in one bond, and that is going to suffer this magnitude of debt restructuring, then it becomes a problem to the whole industry.
In other words, once that is impaired,
the
industry stop to exist.
Stop to exist. The industry is gone.
Okay. So, key question. The debt exchange program originally was supposed to end on Monday, and then they extended to the 30th of December. Has any of your pension funds signed on?
Not that I know of, because if you remember, the chamber issued a statement which advised the trustees or the members of the chamber not to sign on to the debt exchange program in its current format. And we told them that we are trying to get the ministry to renegotiate the terms of the debt exchange program. And not long ago, that was on Monday, I think Friday, but it started coming out on Monday. We released another statement for the employer-sponsored schemes. You know, there are two ways that we do this pension fund thing. We have the corporate trustees, and we have the employer-sponsored schemes. So we had a lot of calls from independent trustees and employer-sponsored schemes who were asking us whether they are also part of our strategy. So we told them that no, we are looking at the total pensions industry as a whole. And then our press release actually referred to everybody who plays in the spheres of the pensions industry. So we needed to speak to them directly also to know that we are also advocating for better terms in this debt exchange program for them.
So that's clarity. You want better terms.
Better terms.
Better terms.
Yeah.
Have you crystallized in your head yet what that better term looks like?
Evans, like I keep on saying, we've not engaged government in a way that we can even put our own, side of the bargain on the table. And therefore, like I keep on saying, it will not be appropriate for us to start telling government that this is what we are looking for in the media.
Okay.
I can also tell you that we are trying, if you read, yes, I know you read our second letter that
Yes.
we said that we are trying to, we advise that nobody should take this debt exchange program. And then we also wrote to the ministry trying to establish the fact that we are ready to engage and to negotiate. And we even point out that we'll be ready to form a domestic bondholders committee. This is very important because if you read the IMF's best practice on this debt exchange program, it requires that the bondholders or the creditors should be given the chance to form a committee that will lead the negotiation in the debt exchange program.
True. That is what the
Euro
our external bondholders have done.
But unfortunately for the domestic bondholders, that was not done. And then, so the announcement, as we keep on saying, was a surprise to all of us. So now, when we also wrote for the extension, we got extension. So we are putting together a team that will also lead us.
So that will be represent banks, yourselves, or this is just yourself? Because it has to be a committee of everybody else who is exposed.
Yes, it has to be a committee of everybody. We're trying to talk to the other industries also, so that all of us can come to that level of conclusion that we can present one committee. So we are engaging the industries. I can say we are engaging Ghana Insurance Association in this. We are also engaging Ghana Securities Industries Association also in this. Banks have not been forthcoming. I'm sure they have their own strategy. But I'm sure when government actually accept the fact that we need to follow best practice standard, and therefore there's a need for a domestic bond holders committee, I'm sure the banks will also come on board and other creditors who are also
come on board. Let me ask you, so the workers, let's take, so far we've had the public sector workers. They are your customers?
Yes.
They are your customers?
Yes, so if you look at the way the pension funds is managed, the public sector workers, except CLOSAC, who have a trustee, that is called hedge pensions.
Okay.
The rest of them, health workers, educations, JUSAC, have some of our members as their administrators.
Okay.
So yes, there is that high connectivity. So that is why the last time I told you that there is no way even government can decide to treat the public sector workers differently from the private sector workers.
Because we also...
Because we know. We are all in the same boat, so we know what is happening. So
that would tier
2 and tier 3.
Yes.
Yeah, so we are all in the same boat, so we know what happens with each other. So there's no way. That is why it becomes very important that we need to have this one voice so that we can be able to have a very good negotiation.
Okay, stay with me. Let me bring in your customers. Let me bring in first Angel Kabonu. Mr. Kabonu, so that's the pension fund rep holders, the trustees. What do you make of their approach to finding a solution to this?
Well, good evening, Evans. Let me say that the position of organized labor, as at the time we organized the press conference, was that organized labor is indicating to government to exempt without conditions pension funds from the debt exchange program it intends to initiate. Let me also remind you, Evans, that most of the bonds that the various funds purchased were in one way or the other coercive, because government had owed the pensions huge sums of money in the TPFA. And when government realized that it was unable to pay, some of these issues went to court. We had consent judgment with government, which was adopted as ruling of the courts, where government, because it was unable to come up with money, negotiated that they were going to buy bonds, that the various funds should buy bonds. So some of the bonds that were bought was because government was unable to fulfill its obligation in transferring funds that was in its possession at the Bank of Ghana to the various funds for investment. Now, the very untidy approach by the Ministry of Finance baffles some of us, because if you have a program like this that is going to touch the lives of people, the level of engagement that is expected of government, discussion with industry players, talking to academia, talking to the people this whole exercise is going to affect, was absolutely non-existent. And for government to think that a 1st December meeting with fund managers was enough to pursue its program was very baffling to some of us, because the various fund managers take instruction from the various board of trustees. And the fund managers cannot decide to take a decision when they have not been instructed by the people who employed them. So by what authority was government expecting the various fund managers to take those decisions in the first place? But Evans, let's go a little bit back into history to 2018. From 2018 to date, thousands and thousands of Ghanaians, retirees and non-retirees, have lost huge sums of money because of the untidy way government implemented the bank
the cleanup.
program.
The bank is the
The
cleanup.
cleanup, it was very, very untidy. There were a lot of loose ends. People lost huge sums of money. People are still suffering and reeling under the yoke of those losses as you and I speak today. And they do not even know where to go to get answers and take their monies. As we speak, nobody is being brought to book, and yet people are dying on daily basis and so on and so forth. Again, this statement that, oh, government is not touching pension funds, I don't get it. Look, I put my money with you as an investment. And the investment, there is an agreed or expected value to be accrued on the investment. The value so accrued on the investment becomes the real money that I have with you. If I could have kept the money under my pillow, knowing very well that I was not going to get any value on the money, what that money could buy 10 years ago, that money cannot buy today. So when you touch my money and you come and tell me that I'm not touching the principal, what do some people think of us? What are some people thinking? Please, the position of Labour is clear, and it is very clear to government. Touch not my pension funds.
Okay.
That is the watchword.
Okay.
Touch not
your pension funds. Stay with me, Angel. Let me bring in Dr. Frank. So, Doc, that is your position, but there is also the reality of what is the reflection of the current economic crisis, which I guess Mr. Esso had intimated, which is that something must give, and so their approach is to negotiate better terms. Is that acceptable to yourself and your members who are, as he's confirmed, you are customers of the funds?
Good evening, Evans, and good evening to your viewers and, of course, those who are listening to you on radio. Evans, the truth of the matter is that we shouldn't have even gotten to this point where decisions are taken before various stakeholders are engaged. I think for a good project, if you really want to get the buy-in of everyone, the first thing to do is that you engage at least everyone who is involved, everyone who will be affected, so that at least there is some degree of consensus that is built. And once that is done, it becomes so easy for everybody to accept your decisions or whatever actions you take. If you look at this debt exchange program that the Ministry of Finance and, for that matter, government has embarked upon, clearly it was more or less like a military-style approach. It was like take it or leave it. And as we speak, you realize that the deadline keeps changing. Initially, I think it was this last Monday.
Yes.
It was shifted to the end of this month, and suddenly it is going to the 6th of January. Once you begin to see that, then clearly you see that somebody did not actually do due diligence. And that is the reason why that is what is happening. The point is that we have crossed the bridge where we are amenable for negotiations. Okay. That bridge is already crossed, it's broken. I don't think that any labor union at this moment would want to negotiate. What we are saying is that they shouldn't touch our pensions. If I tell you, apart from even these tier 2, tier 3 pensions that we are talking about, an organization like Ghana Medical Association, we have a pension fund in the form of GMA fund. If I tell you the impact that this exchange program is having on the fund, you'll be amazed. In fact, 88% of our money is in government bonds, and it is managed by Data Bank. They are our fund managers. And if I tell you how much we are losing because of these decisions, it is crazy. So there is no way we can sit and even renegotiate anything. Bottom line is that government should find other means of solving the problems that we all find ourselves in, so that pensions are not touched. Let me tell you something. There are doctors who retired in this country somewhere in the 2000s, early 2000s and so forth, and they are receiving less than 500 Ghana cedis every month.
As pension? As
pensions. And there are some who retired recently as high as consultants, and their take home as pensions is not up to 3,000.
Wow.
These are the highest. Some are taking less than 2,000 as their pensions. And so when we have these private pension funds like the GMA fund and the others, that comes to cushion them, and that is also being touched, then it's a problem. And so really, I believe that we have crossed that bridge. There is no way we want to go back. And so any renegotiations at this moment should be something that will start when the various bonds that we bought have actually expired, as the agreement was with government when we bought them. There is no way we are going to allow government to touch these bonds and use them, these are pensions, and use them as a leverage to solve its problems.
Okay.
I remember a few days ago I was talking to you, and I indicated to you that there are a lot of areas that we believe that government can touch to ensure that at least we get out of this quicksand that we find ourselves in. Because if you look at the issue of government flagship programs, there are so many of them that we believe we can do some surgeries on them. The size of government, we said that government needs to do some surgeries on that as well. And of course, even per your analysis, I'm sure you remember the last time when you met on this same platform and you did your analysis, and we looked at a program like the cathedral that is being built. Give us what is actually the role of that in our current situation that we find ourselves in.
Let me ask you, Dr. Frank Serebour. It appears to me that there's some reconciliation of positions that must happen now between yourselves and your fund managers. And Mr. Esso, that is an important point. So I see your customers say, we don't want any negotiations, just exempt the fund managers. You manage your funds. You say, well, you want to sit and talk and get a better deal for them, right? There's some reconciliation that must happen between yourselves and your customers. What do you say to that?
Thank you, Evans. I think the chamber has a strategy, and we are planning to engage organized labor in this conversation. But let me say that if we say renegotiate also include ring fencing or rejecting.
Yes.
I mean, renegotiate also includes that this is the position that we brought.
But remember you said you want better terms.
Yes.
That's completely different.
Yes, that's completely different. But it includes all of them. Yeah. It includes ring fence. It includes
but better terms excludes exemption.
Yeah, I understand.
Yes.
But it falls within all of them.
Yes.
That is why I try to remind you that initially we started from reject.
Yes.
Which was true. But if we also take a look at the economy and the effects of what is happening now, and we want to look at how we all can help for the economy to also bounce back to the stage that all of us who place in the financial market can also have to continue with our work, then it's better we all look at these issues openly. I mean, I understand organized labor very well. I mean, I've listened to the two of them, Angel Kombune and Angel
and Dr. Serebour.
And then Dr. Serebour. Yes, they have a very peculiar issues. You know, like I was talking to you before we even came on, said they have very peculiar issue. So anytime they come out with this position, I really understand. I'm very sure if I was also in their shoe, I mean, that would be the same position that I was going to take. Because if you see to the, I mean, if you look at the fact that sometimes their remittances are not even paid out for several months, you know, I've had people working in the public sector who are chasing their pensions, and they've realized that some number of months are not on their statement. They come to my office. I mean, maybe they were coming to report the corporate trustee. They thought the corporate trustees have not done their work.
And they found out the government hasn't released the funds.
Yes, the government have not released their funds. And then it becomes a problem. Some of them are released in tranches. The last time somebody spoke to me, that's about 8 or 10 months that is staying in arrears. So their position is very peculiar. And you look at the fact that most of their TPFA was also paid by government bonds. So they are in a very special position. That is why I keep on saying that we work for them, and then we are also in the same industry. There is no way we can go to the negotiation with the Ministry of Finance and we're going to have separate positions. We still need to have a single position that to go. So my colleagues are also on set. We are all fighting for the same cause. I think it would be appropriate for organized labor and the chamber to have a dialogue so that we can all understand what should be the best possible approach that we can use to resolve this issue. Okay. So I think that maybe from here, that's what we need to do.
Mr. Kabon, what do you say to that?
I agree with him absolutely that they are working in the interest of the Ghanaian workers. In fact, look, pension issues in this country historically have not been anything to write home about. Industry players have come onto the platform of late, and we are all helping to ensure that after you have served this nation, either in a private capacity or in the public capacity, after you have, look at the example Dr. Stribor gave, that a doctor retires and is taking 500 Ghana cedis a month. Then why did he struggle all this life throughout his life to go and even study medicine, only to come into the state of poverty? For even consultants to be taking
less than 3,000 cedis. Less than 3,000.
I don't think it is anything to write home about. You may hear the sound of the money, but I cannot tell you if that money gets into operation, it is nothing to write home about. So, and then teachers, nurses, and all other workers, civil servants, and all that. We are all trying to build, and let us not forget, and thanks to President Kufuor, that we have this 3-tier pension scheme where we have tier 1 that is managed by SNIT, which is a defined benefit, tier 2 managed by the various employment sector scheme, which is a defined contribution, and then tier 3, which is voluntary. That consciousness and awareness is beginning to be built in people that I have to prepare for my future. Right. Now, when people have gotten onto the fray, and we have fund managers, we have fund administrators, all coming to play in this field to ensure that pension becomes something that will help people. The government, through its own mismanagement of the country, because when government was going to take these loans, government did not consult labor, government did not consult you, government did not consult industry players. At the end of the day, when the bubble got burst, then you come and call on the people of this country, the poor people of this country, to rather carry the burden on their shoulders. And I don't think this is fair at all, especially when you have not even sat down with the people that this program is going to affect to have a discussion. To me, I think it is very disrespectful for anyone to take that approach in addressing this issue. At the end of the day, what are we looking for? What is the security of our nation? When people go on retirement, and they go on retirement in a state of poverty, vis-a-vis people being hopeful for their retirement and they have decent living in retirement. A lot of corruption that you see in government places today is as a result of the fact that People are uncertain about their post-retirement life. So whatever they have to do to fix themselves for the future, they do. If the future is certain, a lot of malfeasance, a lot of wrong things will not have been done, and our nation will move forward. I think the government is getting the narrative very wrong.
Okay, so but I get you saying that as far as yourselves and the fund managers are concerned, you're ready to sit, to talk, and get a common position to present to government.
We will sit with anybody who understands our realities. We will sit with anybody who will enhance the wherewithal of the Ghanaian worker. At the end of the day, we will have to have a common principle that the Ghanaian worker ought not to be shortchanged.
Okay. Dr. Frank Serbo, what do you say to that proposition too from the fund managers, that they want to sit so they could, all of you, consider around the table, have a common position, go to government with?
I think that we are always ready to meet them. After all, they are the ones who manage the funds on our behalf, and then they are the industry players. But in as much as we will have that meeting with them, we also have our position. And I think that the position that we hold, I have made it clear on this platform that it's non-negotiable. We should be exempted from the debt exchange program, and that is the position that we hold.
Dr. Francis, if you don't mind me, if you don't mind me asking, if you don't participate, the alternative is that government will default, and if government defaults, you will lose almost the entirety of the funds that are already locked in there. Is that an outcome you can tolerate?
The alternative is that come 27th of this month, we will begin a strike action. That is the alternative. And the alternative is that the whole of the labor sector will shut down. That is the alternative. The alternative is that doctors, nurses, midwives, health service workers, pharmacists will stop work. At the end of the day, 27th, everybody is withdrawing. The alternative is that on the 2nd of January 2023, emergencies will stop. The alternative is that on the 9th of January, we will stop every single work that we do in the hospitals. That is the alternative. So government should also look at that alternative and choose. It's as simple as that.
You know, it also comes down to the ability of government to honor its obligations, as in paying these interest when they are due. Where we are currently, the reality is the money isn't there. Effectively, we are broke as a country, and so we are restructuring our debt. Isn't that the reality, that you can strike all you want if the government can't find the funds to pay up the debt? I mean, that's a reality. Can't find the funds to do, then.
So that is fine. Let's start it and let's see. The reality is that workers are also broke. We don't have the energy. We don't have the strength. Our future is gone. We are basically dead. And so you can't ask a dead man to provide service. No dead person can provide service. If you come on my WhatsApp page, I will tell you that, look, I've written that we live today, we live again tomorrow. But this one, we die today and we are dead tomorrow. And that is what it is. So look, this is the situation we find ourselves in. And like I indicated to you previously, indeed, if government meant well, the first thing they should have done was simply realize that people were going to be affected. And once individuals are going to be affected, there is a need for you to talk. Even your own home that you manage, Evans, if you want to take certain decisions that will affect your wife and your children, I am sure you will have to have a conversation. Because you cannot just get up because you are the man of the house and begin to take decisions that would affect them. They will rebel. And that is the reality. Even though they may see your difficulty, but you need to discuss. You need to let them see the realities. You need to let them see that you have stopped going for funerals and giving huge donations. You need to let them see that you are not driving to the pub every evening and telling them to tighten their belts. So your lifestyle should mimic exactly what you are asking that they should also do to help you. Clearly, if you look at this issue, government's own lifestyle does not show that they mean what they say. Look, we are told individual bonds are exempted, isn't it?
Yes.
Really, let me ask you, how many ordinary Ghanaians have the wherewithal and the money to buy individual bonds, if it's not the rich and the politicians? How many of us have the money to do that? Conveniently, they have exempted themselves. And that is what they have done. So they will find money to pay themselves, but they can't find money to pay us. So look, in this situation that we find ourselves in, it is a fight to the death. And that was the reason why I mentioned on one radio station that, look, in Christmas, public sector workers should be mindful how we spend our money. We need to keep some money, at least to ensure that going forward, when the fight gets dirty, we will still have some money to take care of ourselves. Because I am sure at a point, government may decide to take certain decisions that may not help us in terms of our regulations. So we should be ready. And I believe that we will win this fight. Because at the end of the day, let me tell you the implications of what is going to happen. Airplanes cannot fly in this country. Aeroplanes, the airport will shut down. Aeroplanes cannot land, they cannot fly. Hospitals will close down. And that is the dark implication of what is happening. So I think it's high time government begins to see this as a great security threat. Listen, organized labor is not happy with taking this decision at all, because we already have a crunch negotiations on our hands, which is our basic pay. We would have been happy to reserve our energy and our strength to fight this basic pay negotiations than waste it on our pensions. Actually, we needed not to even think of our pensions. Our employer, which is the government, should have actually been thinking of how best they can make our pensions proper. Are we not in this country that we have Article 71 office holders? What has happened to them? Are we? They are politicians. At the end of the day, people serve 4 years in Parliament and they get ex gratia. You remember there was a time I indicated that public sector workers should also get ex gratia. And when you interviewed the first time, you asked whether I meant it.
Yes.
Really, I did meant it. I meant that we should have ex gratia, because how come somebody goes into political power, serve for 16 years, and then every 4 years he gets ex gratia towards his pension? Angel says something that we probably may have brushed over. It is because of the poor pensions that people receive that tend to make people corrupt in this country. Because at the end of the day, you realize that the reality is staring at you right in the face. You know that the next few years you are going on pension and there is no hope, there is nothing. In countries where pensions are secured, people are even happy to retire prematurely. In this country, people change their ages when they are about to go on retirement. Why? And go and see how many people have sworn affidavits and so forth to change their age. So many people. And after they have been gone on retirement, they come on contracts. We are in this country. There are a lot of public appointees who are on contracts. You think that if their pensions are good and they are enjoying their pensions and they are flying all over the world and even moving around, driving around the country, they will be happy in their pensions to come and work? They wouldn't. People would have mentored people to take over from them because they know that they are going on pension and they are safe. But in this country, people don't even want to mentor anybody because they don't want you to take over from them. They want to come back on contracts. And these are the realities. So I believe that we need to discuss this matter, not in this manner, but in a manner that actually inures to the benefit of the worker when the worker retires at the point in time when his needs are very, very huge. Medical problems start. Your hypertension is on, your diabetes is on. If you are not lucky, your stroke comes in, and then you have all kinds of ailments coming in. Your prostate is swollen, you get prostate cancer, you are getting this, the women are getting all kinds of cancers and so forth, and they need money. So look, we should not be joking with this issue at all.
Yeah. Okay, so let me get clarity from Mr. So can the funds afford to be exempted if the alternative is a government default?
Yeah, thank you very much. Evans, I think I've answered this question several times on several media houses. And I'll continue to say that even though governments try to tell us that the option, if you refuse,
the alternative is default.
The alternative default. I don't think government actually want to default.
Okay, why?
because we all know what default can do to government itself, this country. And we also know that this debt restructuring that is happening, we will try to create some kind of physical space and go back to the bond markets to go and borrow. How will you be going back to bondholders or your creditors that you've defaulted on them to go and borrow from them again? It is highly impossible. And even if somebody will even give you money again, lend you money again, I mean, we have what we call the default risk premium. Are we ready for that default risk premium? So I think that the alternative really is not to default. The alternative is for government to call all of us to the table.
Have they called you? That's the next big thing. Have you been called since all this started 3 weeks ago?
The meeting that we had the last time was also just to reiterate the bond receipt program. That is why when we came back, we wrote our letter and said, look, let's extend this deadline so that we can have...
So you've had, after that Friday, the first Friday meeting, where this was announced to you that it was coming, you've had a second meeting?
We've had a second meeting. When we wrote, we sent our position to the minister, he called us, but I think at the end of the day, we spoke, we told minister what our challenges were as an industry. But at the end of the day, he still reiterated the fact that the bond program has been able, we made a point that zero coupons are not anything that we need to look at the whole term structure.
So you've written back to them?
So we've written back to them, asked them to extend the deadline.
Which has happened now?
We asked for 1 month, but they gave us, let's say, 15 days or so. Let's say 11 days.
So now that you have an extension, what do you intend to do with the time, the extra time you have?
So like I told you, we are putting together our advisory team because
So this is the pension funds advisory team?
Yes, so the corporate trustees.
Corporate trustees.
Yes, which we are hoping that it will revolve into... in fact, our intention actually is the bondholders, the bond committee, the domestic bondholders committee, which we are championing. So we hope that the other sectors who are also affected will come on board so that we can have this.
You have 9 days.
Yes, it's a matter of sitting down when we all show the simulations, and then we see that this is what is going to happen. I'm sure that the Minister of Finance will definitely understand our situation and then do something about it. Look at the position of organized labor. And I think that the minister should really understand this position, because I read the IMF documents, and even though they seek to do this debt exchange, they've already said that vulnerables should be protected. And I've given examples to show that pension contributors are vulnerables. 82% of Ghanaians who are contributing to pensions contribute just 150 Ghana cedis a month.
Say that again.
82% of Ghanaians contribute just 150 Ghana cedis a month to their pension account.
Wow.
So
82% of
who are more vulnerable than this 82%? Dr. Sribo...
That's a powerful start.
They are telling you that, how do you call it, a consultant, even on retirement, is not taking up to 3,000. A lot of their members, and I've seen teachers, statements, because they've come to my office. I've seen some health worker statements, they've come to my office. And so when I see it, you pretend you don't see, because it's so patchy. So these are all vulnerables. And I think that the minister should understand that pension contributors, in this case, are vulnerable than those individuals who have been exempted from the bond exchange program. And so I believe that the minister should understand our position, because this is our future. This is our future security. This is our income security. And this also is what, when we don't have the strength, we are going to rely on. And of course, we also know that inflation have already eaten a chunk of the value of our pensions. But what do we do? So I believe that by the 30th of December, the ministry and then the chamber or the industry will come to a certain conclusion. That will be a win-win for...
When are you meeting the workers?
We are still discussing.
Okay.
We are still discussing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Esso. A lot on your plate. And that last statistic you put out, it's a pretty stark one.
Yes.
82%. 82% of workers contribute 150 cedis a month to their pensions.
I think this was even said by the Director General of SNIT, Dr. John Tinkran, I think around July also, he put that statistics out.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Anyway,
so
thank you very much, Dr. Frank Siriboy, for a doctor who retires earning 500 cedis. Wow. I mean, for a specialist earning consultant earning 3,000. That's a difficult one to take. Enjoy the rest of your evening.